Welcome to Resilience and Restoration, the podcast that reminds us that we collectively are resilient and that hopefully each of us can find restoration in these tough times of COVID-19. We are examining issues related to COVID-19 through the lens that the earliest followers simply called the Way. My name is Greg Powell, and I am the minister at Castlegar United Church in British Columbia, Canada. Thank you for tuning in. These days, it's more important than ever to stay connected and stay plugged in. So let's be one as we examine some of these questions and some of these issues. There is never a bad time to imagine how the world could be. I often wonder how it was that this movement of the followers of the Way turned into this religion that is mammoth. 1 billion followers in the world today identify themselves as Christians, and this came from a ragtag group of people that followed this one man 2,000 years ago. What on earth was it? Of course, we have the stories of the crucifixion and the miracles of the resurrection and the healings and the teachings, but there's something even more. And I wonder if what that was, this something more, was the vision that Jesus conveyed. He talked about this coming kingdom, and it's not entirely clear what that referred to. I take it as a state of being on this earth. And he must have described that in such vivid terms as to captivate his audience. This vision of how the world could be when we are all belonging, when we are all loving and beloved. Then, just as now, is an excellent time to imagine how things could be and to actively shape things to be the way they could be. So as we're in this pause of COVID-19 where so little is as it used to be and we will be reconstructing society before too long, now is a great time to imagine how things could be. And one of the things that we need to imagine is how we will spend our time when this is all over. Time may be the most precious thing we have as far as we know. And how we use that time, how we spend that time says everything about what is important to us, who we are as individuals, who we are as a society. And now that we're in this pause when some of us have a burden of too much time, some of us have less time than we had before, now is an incredible time to think about what matters most in terms of how we spend our time. Now, this idea wasn't originally mine. When I asked my brother for some input in terms of what he liked about this podcast, he said, I would like to explore how we spend our time. He's somebody who has worked pretty hard. He spends long days working. He commutes between various workplaces. And so his days are long. And now that he is effectively laid off, he is at home with his daughter all day, every day. He's not doing quite as many adventures as he would have done if he was, say, on vacation. But he wanted us to think about how we are spending our time, both now in this COVID-19 pause, but also in a reconstructed world, how we will spend our time. Will we do things the same as before? Will we do things differently? On this concept of time, an article that was recently published by Broadview magazine caught my attention. It caught my attention first and foremost because it was written by a friend and colleague of mine, Miriam Spies, who is presently studying for her PhD at Emmanuel College in Toronto. And Miriam introduced to me the concept of Crip time. Others might be familiar with this. And it derives from a term that people with disabilities have reclaimed. Crip time refers to what Miriam describes as activities of daily living that take longer and require more support than they do for many others. And I found this idea so intriguing that I wanted to bring Miriam in on the conversation. And I did so by connecting with another colleague of ours who wrote another piece that really caught my attention. This is Etienne Lesage, who offered a bit of a critique for those who are saying, don't worry, everything will go back to normal, we'll be just as productive as we were before, before too much longer. And Etienne's issue with that is, why do we put those expectations on each other? For many people, the old normal didn't work so well. So this post from Etienne caught my attention. Miriam's article caught my attention. And I thought, why not bring them both in on this conversation about time? And finally, I connect with another colleague of mine, Andrea Brennan, who serves Knox United Church in Fernie and Christ Church Anglican, also in Fernie. It's a shared ministry. And Andrea had some struggles with the initial rejuggling of her time when the rhythms and routines were disrupted. She found that quite disorienting, and she's found a way to adapt to this new COVID-19 pause. And she has some ideas about how we might view time differently after the pandemic outbreak. I started by asking my brother Mark about some of the changes they've seen in their family and in their household.
Stacy and I had both been working full-time, and our daughter going to daycare pretty much full-time as well. And so now I'm home full-time and parenting full-time, which is exhausting. If anybody hasn't tried it, it's exhausting. But it's really great. I was often surprised, I'd say, that it's on a weekend, for example, I'd be like, oh, I didn't realize my daughter could do these things, that a lot would change during the week, and you'd catch up a few days later and like, well, that's quite amazing. So to be a part of those things daily is awesome. It's pretty great. But very time consuming, of course, right? That the full-time job becomes sort of changing diapers with the stuffies and
very important stuff
recently, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
So what's more exhausting, a full day of parenting or a full day of Ironman training?
Yeah, right. Clearly parenting. Yeah.
So how's your relationship with your daughter changed?
Yeah, no, I think we're having a lot of fun. That's for sure. Doing all kinds of different things that wouldn't normally do. Um, yeah, I think better. Maybe one of the tests is that if my wife is home, she always asks for Stacy to put her to bed, if that's the option. But we usually alternate daily. But the other day, I got requested to put her to bed,
Ooh,
and
wow.
Stacy was home. So that's
You've moved up the ranks.
right. I'd say so. Yeah.
Do you think this COVID-19 pause has it led you to rethink how you were spending your time before? Like, do you think some of these changes will stick around?
Right. Yeah, that's a really good question. I would like to think so. I'd hope so. But one thing that we have been doing a little bit of is connecting in person with people, at the 2 meter plus distance. So we've been doing some social distancing deck parties. So I'll have a couple come over, and then sit at the far end of the table, and they bring their own things and sort of keep it separate. But so we've been doing that a little bit. We did that in the garage today because it was raining pretty hard, and those kinds of things I certainly hope we can keep up with. But I think prioritizing for friends and family will be different, recognizing just how nice that is to be able to spend that time right now.
And I asked Mark what intrigued him originally about the idea of time during this COVID-19 pause.
And I guess another interesting idea is, so I think a lot of people kind of feel like they're in a bit of a limbo right now, that this is just a temporary measure, and if this was for sure going to be the new norm, how would you spend your time differently? Would there be a whole lot more deliberate things that you would do in the day, and those kinds of things as well?
Yeah, are you thinking like less time at work?
Yeah, and I guess that's the major change for me, right? And in parenting, like I'm having a lot of fun with it, and we haven't been doing a lot of quote unquote educational kinds of things, necessarily. It seems like this is a temporary thing. hopefully. And again, my daughter's 4, so it's not a huge pressure to do those kinds of things. But
It's
you'd
just
probably,
entry level calculus.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, mostly it's like pendulum motion physics, like on a swing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, Stacy is working, so we do have an income coming in, and so I think that's yeah. Again, it works, and if it was to go on, it would be okay for our family. But I certainly feel for folks that that's not the case. That don't have consistent income. I will say, like, it's very fun being a parent, kind of full time for the first time.
Do you think you'd keep that? Like even after restrictions are lifted?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that thought's kind of entered my mind that like I am currently laid off. It's listed as temporary, but there's a possibility, I suppose, that I don't have a job to go back to, and yeah, sure, that'd be like a possibility for sure. 2 or 3 months ago, it wasn't even really on the radar, but sure, I say that now. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah. To be sure, before COVID-19 broke out, my brother was a very active father and very loving, of course, father. So I don't wish to portray him in any other way, but I did find it intriguing that he is considering a different calling in life because of this. There are parts of this COVID-19 pause that really work for someone like my brother who is out of work, but they're getting by with one income and he's enjoying all this extra time with his daughter. And what about for other people? People who are not laid off, maybe don't have kids they're spending extra time with, but have some of the same demands on their lives, maybe even more demands. And so I caught up with Miriam Spies and Etienne Lesage. Both are ministers in the United Church, both happen to live in Hamilton, both happen to have cerebral palsy, and so I was quite intrigued mostly by what they had written and the perspective that it offered me. So I was delighted when they accepted my invitation to be part of this conversation. Etienne and Miriam and I were reflecting on some of the changes that we've either experienced in our own habits and lives or that we've seen our other colleagues in ministry go through. We talked about the shifting expectations that, well, all of us in society have experienced recently, but we looked at that in terms of ministers specifically.
What what are the expectations of managers now that they're home and some of them are caregiving and some are yeah, it just changes. It doesn't change everything, but I think it starts to uncover the expectations we hold of leaders.
Can I maybe ask that in the context of the piece you wrote for Broadview, Miriam? Like, in light of the kind of rising expectations that now ministers are also technological gurus and everything, what does that mean for someone with disabilities living in Crip time? A minister with disabilities living in Crip time, how are they supposed to tend to all these extra demands?
Yeah. Well, that's a very good question. I think before adding on so many demands, I think congregations need, or maybe now even that they've had a few weeks of managers facing this demand, they need a conversation about what's actually practical so that people don't burn out trying to do Zoom 7 days a week or trying to write something in